Good day everyone. We will configure Azure Load Balancers in this video. Let's get started. Let's search for load balancers here. So here it is. So let's select load balancers. And then I'm going to click on create here. So I'll be selecting the resource group that is on East US. Let's name it JB underscore LB underscore East US. That's the name for the load balancer here. And the region would be East US. SKU, I will go ahead with standard, and type, I will go with internal, and then tier would be regional. So let's click on next for the front end IP configuration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on add a front end IP configuration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name this one as JBS Wiki CLUST. This is very important because this is the name that I'll be using for creating the Windows cluster. So when you're creating the Windows cluster for JBS AG1, JBS AG2, and JBS AG3, you will be using this particular name that you are giving here. So it is better we select it as appropriate. So here, what I'm going to give is it is JBS Wiki CLUST. And I'm going to select the required subnet. But before that, if you see here, the virtual network is already selected, which is the East US virtual network. Now I'm going to select the subnet related to the database one. So I'm going to select this JBS Wiki underscore DB underscore subnet East US. And assignment, I'll be selecting the static. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give an IP address. It is very critical you remember this name and also the IP address. Yeah, so it is going to be, the IP address is going to be 172.20.1.19. So what I'll do is I will note down these information in a notepad file so that I can use it at a later stage. So notepad, this is the IP address that I've selected, and this is the name that I have selected. Let me put that across. Yep. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the availability zone as zone redundant. So just a recap. So the name is going to be JBS Wiki CLUST, and the IP address is going to be 172.20.1.19. So let's click on add. It is added now. We'll click on the backend pools now. Okay, so before clicking on backend pools, we have created one for the Windows cluster. Now what we'll do is we will create another one for our the listener, the always on availability group listener. So the always on availability group listener name would be JBS APP. And then we know that we have this virtual network JBS Wiki VNet ESTUS is already selected. So we will go ahead and select the a subnet that is present there. And I'm going to have an static assignment here. And the IP address that I'm going to have is 172.20.1.20. So this is the IP that I'll be using. Let's copy this one also. Okay, so this is for the Windows cluster, this is the IP address, and this is for the always on availability group listener, and this is the IP address. So now what we'll do is we will click on add, and then let's click on next backend pools. Let's click on add a backend pool. So let's give a name here. So what I'll do is I will give it as JBS, maybe JB underscore BP, which stands for backend pool, and then I will give it as East US. Yep. And then backend pool configuration would be NIC would be fine for me. And as far as the IP configuration is concerned, let's click on add. And here, what I'm going to do is like um, um, okay, that is kind of missed here. Okay, just give me 1 minute. So let's name it here as JV underscore BP underscore East US, and then backend pool configuration would be NIC, and then for the IP configuration, just click on add, and then I'm going to select JBS AG1 and JBS AG2 because these two things will be part of this particular load balancer. And as far as this backend pool is concerned, it will be only JBS AG1 and AG2. For the resources in Korea Central, we'll be creating a different load balancer. So for this, let's click on add here. So if you can see here, these two things are added here without any issues. Let's click on save. Yep, now what we'll do is like we will click on next inbound rules. So now what we'll do is like we will click on add a load balancing rule. Let's name this JB. LBR stands for load balancing rule. Then we will name it as cluster. Yep, and IP version would be IPv4 front-end IP address. I will select our JBS wiki cluster first, and then as far as the backend pool is concerned, we have collected it. We have created it already. So I'm going to select this JB underscore BP, which is your backend pool underscore East US. That should be the configuration here. I'm not going to check this HA ports. Protocol would be TCP. And as far as the port is concerned, I'm going to give it as 548. So 58888. I'm going to have same for backend port also. Yep. And what I'll do is like as far as the health probe is concerned, I'm going to click on create new. Let's name this health probe. It will be like JV-HP is health probe -cluster. And then the protocol would be TCP and the port would be 548. That is 5888 and 8. I will leave the interval to 5 and then let's click on OK here. So now this is created as far as the health probe is concerned. So now what we'll do is like we will move on to other things now. So the session persistence would be a none, and I will leave other things as default here, and then I will click on add here. Yeah, this is created now. So we have completed for the cluster JBS Wiki CLUST. Now let's do it for the listener. Yep. So what we'll do is like we will name it as JB LBR, which is your load balancing rule, and then let's name it as AON listener, which is always on listener here. So I will go ahead with the IP version of IPv4, and for the front end IP address, I will select the listener IP address here, which is JBS APP. And as far as the backend pool is concerned, we will use the same one, which is JB underscore BP stands for backend pool underscore East US. And HA ports will be not selected. We will leave it unchecked, and protocol would be TCP. And as far as port is concerned, I will use 1433 so that I don't give the port number while connecting to the listener. So I will use 1433. And as far as the health probe is concerned, I will click on create new. Let's name it. It would be JB-HP hyphen AON LISTENER. I will name it as JBHP AON list. Let's select TCP for the protocol, and the port, we know that it is port would be 1433. Interval, we will keep it as 5, and then let's click on OK here. So we have completed the health probe. Session persistence would be none, and we will leave everything as it is, and then let's click on add. So if you see here, this is little critical, so that's the reason I'm repeating it one more time. So we have just added the inbound rules for the front-end IP as well as JBS Wiki class, which will be used for your cluster creation, and then JBS app will be used for your listener. Yep. Cool. Let's click on next outbound rules. I will not do any changes here. I will click on tags. I'm not going to do anything here. So let's click on review plus create. Just review it one more time. So we have this JBS Wiki class. And if you want to check your notepad file that you have copied, JBS Wiki CLUST, this is the IP, and JBS APP, which would be your listener, is having this IP. I'm just verifying it, looks good. And then I'm just going to click on create. Yeah. So the deployment is started. We'll wait for it to complete. And once this is done, we will do the same thing as far as Korea Central is concerned. We'll create one more load balancer as far as Korea Central is concerned. So here we are basically deploying it in resource group JBS Wiki underscore East US. And the next one that I'm going to do for Korea Central will be done in JBS Wiki underscore Korea Central resource group. Okay, so this is created now. So what I'm going to do is like I'm going to go to home again and then click on load balancers. And if you can see here, we have the load balancer as far as East US is concerned. Now let's create it for the Korea Central. So let's select the required resource group, which is JBS Wiki Korea Central. Let's name this load balancer. Let us name as JB-LB-Korea CENTRAL. What I'll do is like I'll just copy this one. Yep. So region would be Korea Central. SKU, I will have it as standard, and type would be internal, and tier would be regional. So let's click on next front-end IP configuration. So what I'm going to do is like just like last time, I'm going to click on add a front-end IP configuration. So what I'm going to do is like last time we did it for JBS Wiki CLUST, and then for JBS APP. JBS Wiki class is for your Windows cluster, and then JBS APP would be for your always on listener. So let's start with JBS Wiki CLUST, and then the subnet. This time I'm going to select the subnet that is present in Korea Central. So the virtual network, as far as the Korea Central is already selected, so I'm selecting the subnet for which is under this particular virtual network. Assignment would be static. And here, what I'm going to do is like I'm going to use an IP address, which would be 192.168.1.19. Since we have two locations, that is two regions, and since we are going to set it up as a multi-subnet always on availability group, what we are doing is like we will be having one host name, but it will be having two IP address, one for your East US location, that is one IP address is for East US location, another IP address would be for your Korea Central. So whenever your resources are in East US, it will use the other IP, and whenever it fails over to Korea Central, it will use this particular IP. So if I put it here, it will be a little clear. So let's do the same thing for JBS APP also. But yeah, here the IP address is 192.168.1.19. Let's verify that the name that we have given is same as what we have given as far as East US is concerned, just to make sure like we're not making any mistake. JBS Wiki CLUST. So this is little important. That's the reason I'm telling here. So let's click on add here. Now this is done for the cluster. Now let's do it for the always on listener. So let us name as JBS APP. That is the name that we gave last time. This is the Korea Central Virtual Network. We will select the required subnet, and then let's select assignment as static, and then let's give it as 192.168.1.20. Let's copy it, and then let's put it here for JBS APP. That is done. So availability zone would be a zone redundant. So what I'll do is like I will click on add here. So if you look at it, so we have created one for the front-end IP configuration for JBS Wiki CLUST and then for JBS APP. So if you look at it, this is for this IP address is for East US, and this IP address is for Korea Central as far as the host name JBS Wiki CLUST is concerned. And same way for JBS APP, this IP address is for East US and this IP address is for Korea Central. So what happens is like as long as this particular resource is going to stay in East US, it will be using this IP. When this moves to Korea Central, it will be using this IP address, and that is same for this one too. Okay, so let's click on next backend pools and then add the backend pools. Yeah, so let's click on add, and then let's name it as JB-BP, and then let's give, okay, we have copied it. So yeah, so we will name it as Korea Central. And let's copy it off, and we'll have the backend pool configuration as NIC, and then let's click on the IP configuration. Let's click on add here, and here I have this JBS AG3, so which is deployed in Korea Central. So we will check that, and then we'll click on add here. So if you see here, so we have added this particular virtual machine, which will be basically acting as your DR secondary as far as the always on availability group is concerned. So now what we'll do is like we will click on save here. Let's click on next inbound rules, and as far as inbound rules are concerned, let's click on add a load balancing rule. Now what we are doing is like we are basically creating this load balancing rule. So let's name it as JB LBR, stands for load balancing rule, and then let's name it as cluster. And now the IP version would be IPv4, front-end IP address would be your JBS Wiki CLUST, and then the backend pool is the one that we have created in South Korea Central. So let's select that. HA ports, we will leave it as unchecked, and protocol would be TCP. Port here would be same as what we have done earlier in East US. It is 58888. Backend port will also be 58888. For health probe, let's click on create new. Let's name this health probe as JB hyphen HP cluster, and then protocol would be TCP, and then the port should be 58888. We'll leave the interval as 5 and then click on OK. So this is created. The health probe JB HP cluster is created. Now what we'll do is like we will leave the session persistence as none, and then everything else is okay. So now what we'll do is like we will click on add here. So the load balancing rule for your cluster is down. Let's do it for our always on listener in Korea Central. So let's name it as JB LBR, and let's name it as maybe AON LISTENER. So IP version would be IPv4. Front-end IP address is JBS APP, and then the backend pool would be the one that we have selected before. We'll do that one more time. HA ports will be unchecked. Protocol would be TCP, and port would be 1433. Backend port again is going to be 1433. Now let's go to the health probe. Let's click on create new. Let's name it as JB HP, which is your health probe, and name it as AON LISTENER. Protocol would be TCP IP, and then your port would be 1433. Everything else seems okay, so let's click on OK here, and then session persistence is going to be none, and everything else as default here, and then let's click on add. Let's verify here once. JBS Wiki cluster is the front-end IP, backend pool is JBBP Korea Central, and the front-end port is 58888, and for the listener it is 1433. So now what we'll do is we will click on next outbound rule. We'll have everything as default here, and I will not be adding any tags here. So let's click on review plus create, and then let's click on create once the validation is completed. Okay, let's do a check one more time. So the front-end IP configuration, JBS Wiki CLUST, the IP is 192.168.1.19, and for the listener it is JBS APP, and the IP address is 192.168.1.20. So let's click on create. Let's give it another 30 seconds and it should be created. So the deployment is in progress. It is created now. We are good to go. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Jai Hind.